The chandeliers of the Grand Astoria ballroom dripped light onto a sea of tuxedos and designer gowns. Crystal glasses clinked like wind chimes as waiters glided between clusters of America's elite. This was the Metropolitan Philanthropy Gala, where checkbooks opened in direct proportion to how thoroughly one was seen opening them. Friday, 9:47 p.m., Conrad Sterling's laugh boomed across the marble floor, commanding attention as it had for decades. At 80, the real estate mogul wore his $2 billion net worth like a bespoke suit, tailored to intimidate. His portfolio of luxury high-rises and professional sports franchises had made him a fixture in these rooms, and he moved through them with the assurance of someone who believed he had built his empire entirely on merit. "The market doesn't lie," he announced to the circle of nodding executives surrounding him. "Never has, never will." Across the room, near the French doors overlooking Central Park, Dr. Alani Vance stood in quiet conversation with Marcus Thorne. Her architectural firm and investment company had transformed skylines across 3 continents, while his basketball legacy had evolved into groundbreaking community development work. Both black, both brilliant, both belonging entirely to themselves. A photographer captured their exchange, her elegant gesture emphasizing a point, his thoughtful nod in response. The flash caught Conrad's eye. "Kevin," Conrad muttered to his young associate, a Harvard business graduate hired more for family connections than talent. "Show me your phone." Kevin obediently opened his social media feed, where the gala's official account had already posted the photo. Conrad's face tightened, eyes narrowing as he studied the image of Vance and Thorne. "Look at this," he said, voice dropping to a granite whisper. The circle of executives leaned in, sensing the shift in temperature. "It bothers me, you know? People like her, broadcasting that they're associating with them." The words hung in the perfumed air, naked in their contempt. "I mean," Conrad continued, emboldened by nodding heads, "we invite them to these events because we have to. But there's a difference between tolerance and whatever this is." He gestured dismissively at the phone. "She doesn't belong with them, not in my world." Kevin shifted uncomfortably, but managed a weak smile. The circle maintained its shape, no one willing to challenge the man whose signature adorned their paychecks. None noticed Sophia Chen, features reporter for the Economic Daily, nursing a club soda 3 feet away. None saw her phone, casually held at her side, recording every word. None registered the slight widening of her eyes as she captured Conrad dismantling his reputation syllable by syllable. The recording light blinked steadily, red, like warning. Conrad drained his whiskey, already forgetting what he'd said. The words were casual to him, merely Tuesday's truth, no different from Mondays or Wednesdays. Just another offhand remark in a lifetime of them, each reinforcing the boundaries of his worldview. He had built his fortune on such boundaries. The good neighborhoods he developed had covenants his lawyers assured him were technically legal. The quality tenants his management companies sought were identified through screening processes that somehow excluded certain applications. His buildings rose like monuments to exclusion, floor by gleaming floor. Dr. Vance laughed at something Thorne said, the sound carrying across the ballroom. Conrad glanced over, irritated by her ease, her belonging. In his mind, she remained a visitor to his realm, regardless of her accomplishments, her wealth, her power. Sophia slipped her phone into her clutch and moved toward the exit, the digital evidence of Conrad's true character securely captured. By morning, his words would reach millions. By noon, the first sponsors would pull out of his sports franchise. By next week, the league would vote. Have you ever watched someone lose everything because they thought no one was listening? Conrad Sterling raised his empty glass for a refill, blissfully unaware that he had just authored his own downfall in 5 whispered words. She doesn't belong with them. His empire of exclusion had exactly 84 hours left. Monday, 6:15 a.m., breaking news alert. The notification lit up millions of phones simultaneously. Breaking: real estate billionaire Conrad Sterling caught on tape making racist comments about black basketball legend and CEO. Conrad Sterling wasn't just any real estate mogul. He was the living embodiment of systemic exclusion, a man who built his fortune by keeping others out. By 7:30 a.m., the audio had been played on every major network. Sterling's voice, unmistakable in its gravelly authority. She doesn't belong with them. Not in my world. The context made clear who she was, Dr. Alani Vance, whose architectural vision had transformed skylines across America. Who they were. Black excellence personified in Marcus Thorne. Economic Daily's homepage featured an infographic titled, The Sterling Empire. 237 luxury apartment buildings across 18 cities, 12 five-star hotels, 4 office complexes in Manhattan alone, 1 professional basketball franchise valued at $1.2 billion. But beneath the gleaming towers lay a foundation of discrimination. This isn't an isolated incident, legal analyst Miguel Rodriguez explained on Morning America. Sterling's companies have settled 4 major housing discrimination lawsuits with the Department of Justice since 1995. The graphic beside him detailed the pattern. 2018, $8 million settlement for systematically rejecting qualified Black applicants. 2012, $4.5 million for predatory lending practices targeting Latino homeowners. 2007, $11 million for maintaining demographic quotas in luxury buildings. 1995, $3 million for documented rental discrimination. By 9:45 a.m., the first sponsor announced its withdrawal. Lux Auto, whose vehicles gleamed in the team's arena, released a statement. We cannot associate our brand with these views, which contradict our core values of inclusion and respect. At 10:23 a.m., Global Air followed. By noon, 6 more sponsors had pulled out. The players' group chat exploded overnight. Team captain DeAndre Williams posted publicly at 8:15 a.m., "We won't play for a man who sees us as property, not people. Sterling must go." On financial networks, analysts calculated the damage. Sterling's net worth has dropped an estimated $400 million in just 6 hours, reported Financial Times. The NBA franchise alone has lost sponsorships worth $86 million annually. The comments section on Economic Daily's website flooded with former employees breaking silence. He told managers to carefully screen applicants with ethnic-sounding names. Former property manager, Sterling Heights, 2014-2019. We had a coded language for rejecting certain applications. Anonymous leasing agent, 2010-2015. A real estate broker who worked with Sterling in the 1990s revealed, "He once told me, I don't want them getting too comfortable in my buildings. They depress property values." Basketball legend Michael Richardson joined the conversation at 11:45 a.m. "I've known Conrad Sterling for 30 years. This isn't a slip-up. This is who he is." By noon, the league commissioner announced an emergency meeting of team owners. The stock price of Sterling Holdings plummeted 28% before trading was temporarily halted. The marble lobbies that once displayed no colored signs now featured Sterling's corporate logo. Different symbols, same message. His buildings rose like monuments to exclusion, gleaming glass fortresses designed to keep certain people out, even as they housed the privileged few. For decades, Sterling had avoided consequences through carefully worded settlements and strategic donations. But there was no legal team skilled enough to silence a recording of his own voice, speaking his own truth. His empire wasn't crumbling, it was being revealed for what it had always been. Tuesday, 10:30 a.m., Vance Equity Partners headquarters. While the world watched Sterling's empire crumble, Dr. Alani Vance was doing something different. She was calculating its value. The 44th floor of Vance Tower hummed with focused energy. In the glass-walled boardroom, Dr. Gruiter Vance stood before a wall of displays, not news headlines or social media feeds, but financial projections, asset valuations, and market analytics. 6 executives sat around a black marble table, eyes moving between their CEO and the cascading numbers. The basketball franchise alone is undervalued by 18%, Dr. Vance noted, her voice carrying the quiet authority that had become her signature. Sterling's real estate holdings show a 24% potential growth rate if properly leveraged for mixed income development. Lena Roberts, Chief Operating Officer, looked up from her tablet. "You're not just analyzing the fallout, you're calculating acquisition costs." Dr. Vance nodded once. "Opportunity doesn't announce itself, it whispers." On the screen behind her, Sterling's empire was reduced to its components: assets, liabilities, growth potential, community impact scores, the language Dr. Vance had spoken fluently since childhood. Her great-great-grandmother, Eleanor Mason, had been born enslaved in Georgia in 1848. After emancipation, Eleanor worked as a midwife, saving every dime until she purchased her first plot of land in 1872. That single acre grew to 12, then 40, becoming the foundation for a church, a school, and homes for 5 black families. Land outlasts prejudice, Eleanor had written in a journal Dr. Vance kept in her office. They may hate us, but the earth doesn't care who owns it. It only cares who builds on it. 4 generations later, Alani Vance graduated with dual doctorates in architecture and economics, determined to build on her ancestors' foundation. But the doors of opportunity remained firmly closed. "Your business model is too community-focused," said the first bank that rejected her loan application. "We don't see the profit potential," said the 8th. "Perhaps something smaller scale would suit you better," suggested the 19th. By the 32nd rejection, Dr. Vance stopped counting excuses and started building anyway. She designed affordable housing complexes during the day and developed her business plan at night. Her first investor was her former professor, who contributed $50,000. Her second was a community credit union. By year 3, Vance Equity Partners managed $10 million in assets. Now, 15 years later, the firm controlled $4.7 billion across real estate, technology, and media. Each investment adhering to what the financial press called the Vance Doctrine: profit through community empowerment. Every Vance property included affordable housing units. Every development incorporated community spaces. Every investment created jobs that paid living wages. The financial world had scoffed initially, then watched in silence as her returns consistently outperformed industry averages. "What are you seeing that we're missing?" Marcus Chen, head of acquisitions, asked as he studied the Sterling data. Dr. Vance zoomed in on a map highlighting Sterling's properties. His buildings occupy key locations in historically redlined neighborhoods, areas our Community Impact Fund has targeted for reinvestment. She switched to another screen showing demographic data. His discriminatory practices created artificial value suppression across these census tracts. With inclusive management and strategic community investment, we could unlock billions in currently trapped value. This wasn't personal. It was mathematical. It wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. The executives exchanged glances. They recognized the look on their CEO's face, the same expression she'd worn before acquiring the abandoned factory complex in Detroit, the neglected waterfront in Baltimore, the written-off neighborhoods in Atlanta. Each acquisition had transformed not just property values, but community trajectories. "The league will force a sale," Dr. Vance continued. "Estimated timeline 10 to 14 days, projected asking price $2 billion minimum." Lena inhaled sharply. "That would require significant leverage, even for us." Dr. Vance turned from the screens, surveying her team. Diverse, brilliant, united by a shared vision of wealth as a tool for transformation. "Prepare a bid," she said, her voice calm yet immovable as bedrock. "No partners. We're taking the entire thing." The room fell silent. This would be their largest acquisition by far. "Alani," Marcus began, "Sterling publicly insulted you. People will say—" "People always talk," she interrupted. "Buildings speak louder." Dr. Vance didn't need a seat at Sterling's table. Her ancestors had built tables when they weren't allowed to sit at any. Thursday, 2 p.m., League headquarters. It took the League commissioner exactly 72 hours to reach a decision that would reshape the landscape of American sports ownership forever. The polished oak doors of the conference room swung open. Commissioner James Mitchell, flanked by the League's executive committee, strode toward a forest of microphones. Camera shutters clicked in rapid succession. The press conference had been announced just 30 minutes earlier, yet every major network had a crew in place. After careful consideration of Mr. Sterling's recorded statements, consultation with team owners, and discussions with players and sponsors, "I've reached a decision," Mitchell began, his voice steady. The silence in the room thickened. "Effective immediately, Conrad Sterling is banned for life from any association with the league or the franchise. He is prohibited from attending games, practices, or accessing any team facilities." A murmur rippled through the press corps. "Additionally, Mr. Sterling is fined $2.5 million, the maximum permitted under our Constitution." Mitchell paused, adjusted his glasses. "Most significantly, I am initiating the process to force a sale of the team under Section 13 of our ownership agreement. The Board of Governors will vote next week to terminate Mr. Sterling's ownership. I anticipate full support. Thursday, 2:16 p.m. Sterling Penthouse, Upper East Side. Conrad Sterling's water glass shattered against Italian marble. The television continued its broadcast, indifferent to his rage. "They can't do this," he sputtered to his attorney Harold Weinstein. "It's my team. I paid for it. I built it." Weinstein's face remained professionally neutral. "They can, Conrad. The ownership agreement you signed gives them this authority." It was a private conversation. Illegally recorded or not, the content is now public. The damage is irreversible. Sterling's phone buzzed, another sponsor terminating their relationship. 16 in 3 days. "The players are planning a boycott if you challenge this," Weinstein added. "Every major advertiser has pulled out. Your fellow owners voted 29-0 in favor of the forced sale." Sterling collapsed into a leather chair, suddenly looking every one of his 80 years. "How much?" he whispered. "Team valuation was $1.1 billion last year. Current market conditions suggest—" "I don't care about market conditions. How much will I lose?" Weinstein sighed. "Nothing, technically. You'll receive fair market value. But your legacy," Sterling waved his hand dismissively, "legacy is for dead men." Friday, 9:30 a.m., Financial Times online bidding war begins for Sterling's team. Sources confirm at least 6 serious bidders have emerged for the professional basketball franchise being forcibly sold by disgraced real estate mogul Conrad Sterling. Potential buyers include tech billionaire Elijah Price, net worth $38 billion, Sheikh Hamdan bin Mohammed Al Maktoum, Dubai Sovereign Wealth Fund, entertainment mogul David Geffen, leading investor group, former player Magic Johnson with Guggenheim Partners, Chinese conglomerate Wanda Group, anonymous major American business figure. Projected sale price could exceed $2 billion, nearly double the previous record for a sports franchise. Friday, 11:45 a.m., Twitter trends Sterling out. 1.2 million tweets. Billion-dollar bigot, 842K tweets. Boycott Sterling Properties, 613K tweets. Who will buy the team, 522K tweets. Monday, 10 a.m., Federal Court, Southern District of New York. Judge Marilyn Coker removed her glasses, fixing Sterling's legal team with a steely gaze. "Let me be clear. Your client agreed to binding arbitration when he purchased the team. The league's constitution explicitly grants the commissioner power to protect the best interests of the sport. Your request for an emergency injunction is denied." Sterling's lead attorney rose. "Your Honor, if I may." "You may not. This court will not intervene in a private contractual matter where the agreement clearly permits the actions taken. The sale will proceed." Tuesday, 8:45 a.m. CNBC breaking. The NBA Board of Governors has voted unanimously to terminate Conrad Sterling's ownership. The sale process will begin immediately, under league supervision. Tuesday, 3 p.m., Sterling's attorney's office. "It's over, Conrad," Weinstein said, closing his leather portfolio. "We've exhausted every legal avenue. The team will be sold. The only question now is to whom." Sterling stared out the window at the city he'd spent decades reshaping in his image. Buildings he'd constructed, neighborhoods he'd transformed, all monuments to a philosophy of exclusion masked as excellence. "Let Price have it," Sterling muttered. "Or the Arabs. Anyone but those players trying to pool their money." Weinstein didn't respond. The preliminary bids were confidential, but rumors suggested the highest offer might approach $2.5 billion, a record-shattering price that would still represent a devastating personal defeat for Sterling. Outside, justice for Sterling trended briefly before being overwhelmed by karma comes collecting and billionaire bigot falls. But what Sterling never understood was that his biggest threat wasn't coming from the league, the players, or the sponsors. It was coming from someone he'd never considered an equal. Someone whose vision for his empire was bigger than his prejudice could imagine. Friday, 9 a.m., Vance Equity Partners. Dr. Alani Vance didn't make emotional decisions. She made strategic ones, and the numbers told her everything she needed to know. The Vance Equity Partners executive boardroom buzzed with calculated intensity. Financial models projected onto glass screens, legal documents stacked in precise piles, and the steady click of keyboards formed the soundtrack to what might become the most significant acquisition in American sports history. $2 billion, all cash, Dr. Vance announced, reviewing the final offer document. Non-negotiable, no financing contingencies, 48-hour acceptance window. Marcus Chen, head of acquisitions, whistled softly. The league's asking price was $1.8 billion. We're offering a $200 million premium. That's 11% markup. It eliminates counteroffers, Dr. Vance replied, and accelerates approval. Time is our competitive advantage. Lena Roberts, COO, cleared her throat. Alani, we need to address the elephant in the room. You were personally insulted by Sterling. The press will frame this as revenge. The room fell silent. Dr. Rowe, Vance looked up from her documents, her expression unchanged. Let me be clear, she said, voice level. This isn't about Conrad Sterling's opinion of me. His words were merely a window into a mindset that has shaped real estate in this country for generations. She stood, tapping her tablet. The wall screen shifted to a map of the city, with Sterling properties illuminated in red. These buildings sit on land that once had racial covenants preventing black families from purchasing homes. These apartments actively discriminated against minority applicants as recently as 2018. The map zoomed in, highlighting neighborhoods. This isn't about revenge. This is about reclaiming space. It's about transforming properties built on exclusion into vehicles for inclusion. Dr. Julian West, Chief Financial Officer, spoke next. The financing structure is revolutionary. We've created a consortium of 7 black-owned banks providing $800 million in senior debt. The remaining $1.2 billion comes from our equity reserves. The screen changed to show the banking consortium. These institutions collectively hold $42 billion in assets, primarily from black depositors. Their participation creates a circular economy where community wealth finances community ownership. Dr. Vance nodded. When was the last time black banks participated in a billion-dollar acquisition? Never, Julian answered. This will be the first. Precisely. We're not just buying buildings. We're rewriting financial history. The debate continued for another hour, examining every angle, risk, and opportunity. This wasn't impulse. It was strategy executed with surgical precision. Monday, 11:30 a.m., League headquarters Commissioner Mitchell reviewed the bid documents with widened eyes, then looked up at his general counsel. This is the cleanest offer I've ever seen. No contingencies, no financing issues, immediate cash transfer, and a premium over asking price. He shook his head in disbelief. And the bidder is Dr. Alani Vance, his counsel confirmed. Vance Equity Partners. The woman Sterling insulted at the gala. Yes, sir. Mitchell drummed his fingers on the document. The owners will need to vote, but this is elegant, almost poetic. Wednesday, 2:15 p.m., dual locations. The split-screen moment played out across 2 locations separated by 20 blocks. At Vance Equity Partners, Dr. Alani Vance signed the final acquisition documents, her Mont Blanc pen moving with practiced efficiency. The room around her was calm, methodical, focused on the future rather than the past. At Sterling Tower, Conrad Sterling supervised the removal of his personal items from the team offices. Photos came down from walls. Trophies were carefully packed. Memorabilia collected over decades disappeared into cardboard boxes. The league has approved the sale, his attorney informed him, phone still in hand. The new owner takes possession at midnight. Who? Sterling demanded. Who bought my team? The attorney hesitated. Dr. Alani Vance. Sterling's face drained of color. Wednesday, 5:47 p.m., executive parking garage. The executive garage was nearly empty as Sterling walked toward his Bentley, carrying a small box of personal keepsakes too precious to entrust to movers. The rhythmic echo of his footsteps masked the sound of the elevator opening behind him. Dr. Vance emerged, briefcase in hand, having just completed the final walkthrough of her new acquisition. Their paths intersected between concrete pillars. Sterling froze. For a moment they regarded each other, the past and future of an empire facing off under fluorescent lights. He opened his mouth, closed it, then found his voice. You did this to punish me. Dr. Vance studied him with the measured gaze of an architect assessing a structure. No, Mr. Sterling, I did this because you undervalued the asset. He bristled. I built this team, this whole city. You built on exclusion, she corrected. I'm building on possibility. Sterling's grip tightened on his box. You think you've won? This isn't about winning, Dr. Vance replied. It's about transformation. She stepped aside, allowing him clear passage to his car, a courtesy he hadn't extended to countless others throughout his career. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply met his gaze with the quiet confidence of someone who had just bought the table he thought she didn't deserve to sit at. 3 months later, buying an empire was just the beginning. Transforming it would be Dr. Vance's true legacy. The former Sterling Arena hummed with anticipation as 3,000 employees gathered for the company-wide town hall. The basketball court temporarily transformed into a meeting space filled with voices that reflected the city outside. Diverse, vibrant, expectant. Dr. Vance walked to center court without announcement or fanfare. No spotlights, no introduction. The crowd quieted naturally as she took her position, microphone in hand. "When I acquired this company, I didn't just buy buildings," she began. "I bought possibility. For 90 days, we've evaluated every aspect of this organization. Today, we chart our course forward." Behind her, the massive screen displayed the company's new mission statement. Building communities, not just properties. Effective immediately, we are establishing the Legacy Foundation with an initial endowment of $250 million, she announced. Gasps rippled through the audience. This foundation will focus on 3 pillars: affordable housing, education access, and entrepreneurial support. The screen shifted to a map of the city with highlighted neighborhoods. These areas were systematically denied investment through redlining practices for generations. Our first initiative converts 8 Sterling luxury developments into mixed-income communities with 40% affordable housing units. She clicked to the next slide. The foundation will partner with community land trusts to ensure perpetual affordability, preventing future displacement. Construction begins next month, creating 2,800 new jobs with priority hiring from these same neighborhoods. In the front row, facility managers who had once enforced Sterling's exclusionary policies exchanged glances of amazement. This wasn't charity, it was reconstruction. Dr. Vance continued, "I'd like to introduce our new executive leadership team." 6 individuals joined her at center court. 4 women, 2 men, representing Black, Latino, Asian, and white backgrounds. Their credentials appeared on screen: Harvard, Howard, Stanford, CCNY, MIT. Former executives from Google, Goldman Sachs, community development corporations, and public housing authorities. "Our leadership now reflects the communities we serve," Dr. Vance explained. "Because perspective matters when shaping skylines and neighborhoods." The applause was spontaneous and sustained. "Our education initiative launches next week," she continued when the room quieted. "We're partnering with 40 public schools to create STEM academies focused on architecture, engineering, and sustainable design. Each school receives $1 million in renovations and $500,000 in annual program funding." The screen displayed architectural renderings of modernized school facilities. "For entrepreneurs, we've created a $100 million venture fund exclusively for founders from underrepresented groups. The fund will focus on community-enhancing technologies with accelerator spaces in our commercial properties." She paused, surveying the room. "Some numbers for those who speak that language. After 90 days of implementation, employee retention is up 28%. Applications for positions have increased 340%. Customer satisfaction in our residential properties has improved by 21%. In the third row, Angela Martinez, a property manager with 12 years at the company, wiped away tears. Under Sterling's regime, she'd been forced to reject qualified applicants based on criteria she knew were wrong. The release of that moral burden felt physical. "The real estate industry has operated on exclusion for too long," Dr. Vance continued. "We're proving that inclusion is not just morally right, it's economically powerful." The screen displayed profit projections that showed a 12% increase over Sterling's best quarter. "Each of you has a choice," Dr. Vance said, her voice gentle but firm. "Embrace our new direction or find your path elsewhere. There's no middle ground on human dignity." The silence that followed contained none of the tension that had characterized Sterling's regime. Instead, it held reflection, possibility, relief. The same boardroom where Sterling once dismissed her worth now amplified voices he had spent decades silencing. The marble walls that once echoed with exclusionary directives now witnessed collaboration between people who would never have shared space under the previous leadership. As employees filed out, conversations buzzed with energy. Maintenance workers discussed ideas with vice presidents. Security guards shared insights with marketing directors. "This isn't just a new owner," Angela told her colleague. "This is a new world." 1 year later, they called it the Vance effect. Across the industry, companies scrambled to replicate what she had built, not just the profits, but the purpose. Dr. Alani Vance stood on the private balcony of what had once been Conrad Sterling's office, watching the city glow in late afternoon light. The skyline before her was both familiar and transformed. The same buildings now serving different purposes, housing different dreams. The quarterly report sat on her desk inside. Revenue up 34%. Property values increased 29% in previously neglected neighborhoods. Employee retention at a record 96%. The numbers told a story of prosperity born from inclusion. But the true measure of change lay below, in the communities now thriving in the shadow of buildings that once excluded them. In Washington Heights, Maria Gonzalez had opened a cafe in a commercial space reserved for local entrepreneurs. "My grandmother tried to rent an apartment in this building in 1982, she told Business Weekly. "They told her none were available. Now I own a business here, and my family lives upstairs." In Harlem, the first class of high school students graduated from the Vance STEM Academy. 18 received full college scholarships. "Before the academy, I didn't know architecture was an option for someone like me," said valedictorian James Wilson. "Now I'm heading to Cornell's architecture program." 3 major developers had launched their own versions of the Legacy Foundation. 5 had restructured their executive teams to reflect greater diversity. The mayor had established a task force to examine discriminatory housing practices citywide, with Dr. Vance serving as honorary chair. The real estate sections of financial papers now featured a new metric, Community Impact Score. Sophia Chen, the journalist whose recording had catalyzed Sterling's downfall, published her in-depth feature in The Atlantic, The Architecture of Justice, How One Woman Redesigned Power. The article documented the transformation, contrasting Sterling's exclusionary empire with Vance's inclusive vision. Some called it poetic justice when Dr. Vance acquired Sterling's holdings, Chen wrote. But justice isn't poetry, it's infrastructure. It's changing the physical spaces where life unfolds, ensuring they welcome everyone. The article ended with the observation, Dr. Vance didn't just change who owned the buildings, she changed what the buildings mean. As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the city grid, Dr. Vance thought about her great-great-grandmother Eleanor's journal. "Land outlasts prejudice," she had written. How right she had been. Dr. Vance's phone buzzed, another real estate conglomerate requesting consultation on community integration strategies. The transformation was spreading, building by building, company by company. "The journey doesn't end today," she whispered to the city spread before her. "It begins." She hadn't just bought his empire. She had reimagined what an empire could be. Stories like Dr. Vance's aren't just stories, they're blueprints for a different kind of power. In a world fixated on loud victories and public takedowns, Dr. Alani Vance demonstrates something more profound, strategic justice. Not revenge that burns bright and fades quickly, but transformation that rebuilds foundations. Her approach teaches us that true change isn't about destroying what exists, but about reimagining what could be. It reminds us that power expressed through creation leaves a longer legacy than power expressed through confrontation. This raises a question worth considering. What would you transform if you had the resources to do it? Would you rebuild educational systems in overlooked communities? Redesign healthcare access in rural areas? Create economic opportunities in places written off by traditional investors? The most compelling stories of change often come from people who were told they didn't belong and responded by creating spaces where everyone belongs. We want to hear your stories. Have you witnessed moments when someone transformed discrimination into opportunity? When underestimation became fuel for innovation? When exclusion inspired creation? Share these narratives in the comments below. Your experiences might provide the exact inspiration someone else needs to take their first step toward meaningful change. Subscribe for more explorations of quiet power reshaping systems. These aren't sensationalized dramas designed for clicks. They're thoughtful examinations of how real transformation happens, often beyond headlines, in the consistent actions of visionary leaders. Sometimes the most powerful response to being underestimated is proving them wrong, not with words, but with actions that change the world. The question isn't whether you have Dr. Vance's resources. The question is whether you have her vision, the ability to see beyond what is to what could be. What will you build?